Every moment like this actually starts here. Every college football team recruits their players, and when it comes to recruiting, the internet changed everything again and again. Because of that, over the last 30 years, these three brands have had more influence than just about any coach, player, or administrator in the game of football. One man started all of them. Very few fans even know his name. I didn't 6 months ago, and I've been following the industry as a player and now an analyst for 15 years. It's Shannon Terry. The higher his sites rate you, the more options you have. I didn't get a call from Nick Saban at Alabama until Rivals slapped the 5-star label on my name. But that rating is a double-edged sword. If you're like Patrick Mahomes with 3 stars or Josh Allen with 0, it can shrink your options and change your path. How did one man get this much influence on an entire sport? And it's not just a sport, it's the sport in America. I was obviously familiar with the industry, but I dove deeper. I interviewed some of the guys that have been in it the longest. I even interviewed the man himself.
I'm not in the public eye, but it's kind of interesting.
I discovered Shannon Terry was able to take over recruiting 3 separate times because he understood 3 kinds of power. And you need to know all 3 powers, all 3 pillars that his empire was built on to really understand the real story behind the godfather of high school football. Like Da Vinci with the printing press or Steve Jobs with microchips, Shannon Terry owes a lot to how a technological revolution coincided with the day he was born. The internet was becoming mainstream just as Shannon was graduating college, and the internet could solve what he saw as a big problem. He was a college athlete in Nashville, and it wasn't easy to follow his favorite team, the Alabama Crimson Tide. His dorms didn't have TV, and even if he could get to one, the local sports newscasters weren't giving much attention to a team 250 miles away. There were folks covering major high school football recruits, but the information was expensive. Greg Biggins has been known as the scout on the West Coast for the past 30 years. I had other people tell me that on the Mount Rushmore of the industry, Greg is on there with Shannon. He laid it out for me.
Like when I first started, it was 900 numbers. So if you want to know about USC or Notre Dame or Texas or Florida, you would call this 900 number and someone would be on the line, $1.50 a minute or whatever, and you would give all this information about that school. So you could say, hey, Notre Dame, we got a big commitment. You want to tune in next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, call this number. In between then and Tuesday, you're having to try to find some Notre Dame news.
Instead of his own 900 number, Shannon Terry started Alliance Sports. It was a collection of team-specific college sports news and message boards that the obsessed fan like Shannon could access online. The power he leveraged with Alliance from the get-go was network effects. Network effects show up in a business where the value the customer gets increases as the user base increases. Alliance Sports started with 2 sites focusing on Alabama and Auburn, but quickly ballooned to 13 sites. They had the best recruiting coverage because beat reporters would share information. Each site had a great user experience because each new market's success allowed them to invest in the look of each site. It got better and better. The problem was they had a competitor who also saw the advantage of these network effects in college football. Eventually, that competitor came knocking and the Seattle-based Rivals Network bought Alliance Sports for $3 million in 2000. Shannon made $2 million. That's an important detail because less than a year later, the dot-com bubble popped and a bunch of internet companies bottomed out, Rivals included. And that's when Shannon bought back his company along with all of Rivals' other assets out of bankruptcy for a reported $500,000 total. That's 1/4 of what they paid him less than 2 years earlier. This is as good of a time as any to say that luck is a power too, and it is important in this story, but it's just not that interesting to cover. Plus, I feel like Shannon would make an argument like De Niro in Casino. I'm not lucky, I'm smart. If I'm lucky, it's because I make my own luck. Luck in hand, Shannon gambled $500,000 on the hunch that he'd only scratched the surface of these network effects. Some folks thought it was a bad bet. You're gonna charge $10 a month so people can find out where a 17-year-old's gonna go to college, and you're not gonna do it under one singular brand. You're gonna have a bunch of networks like VolQuest, Bama Insider, and Orange Bloods all existing in loose connection. It really does sound insane to an analyst on paper, but Shannon knew what those analysts didn't. College football fans are insane. He knew because he was one too, and that's what fueled the network effects flywheel. As more people subscribed, the coverage across every market got better, which then led to more people subscribing. Simultaneously, that allowed Rivals to launch in more and more markets. 230,000 subscribers later, Shannon ended up selling Rivals to Yahoo in 2007 for $98 million. The guy who bought it, Yahoo's head of media, Jimmy Pitaro, is now the chairman running everything at ESPN. The Yahoo deal meant $20 million personally for Shannon and a cushy corporate job at Yahoo for as long as he wanted it.
I stayed at Yahoo for 2 years. Yahoo was moving kind of a different direction. and I left.
The thing is, Shannon didn't love this niche. He was addicted to it. The dude thought about it all the time. So while he waited out the last year of his 3-year non-compete, he decided that he wanted to take on the behemoth that he just built with a new entity called, what else? 24/7 Sports. Yahoo had all the rivals' network effects. He couldn't run the playbook exactly like he did at the turn of the century, but he did see an opportunity.
And the fundamental difference between 24/7 Sports and rivals at the time was the 24/7 Sports era was starting as most of the traffic was starting to come from search and social.
He also had an ace up his sleeve that I couldn't find reported anywhere else.
And the other little deep secret there that I don't think anyone realizes is that 24/7 Sports was first started with ESPN. They were going to be a 20% owner of 24/7 Sports. So I had really no idea when I left Yahoo that I was going to do this, but then I saw this complete change in the internet, and then you get a chance to do it with ESPN.
But that deal with ESPN fell through. So Shannon's there without the worldwide leader and without the network effects at rivals. He had to find a new power to tap into if he wanted to take advantage of the internet's shift to social. He didn't so much find it as he just leveraged it. It was a power he had been building for the last 10 years. Not all folks are built for reporting on recruiting. You have to share at least some of Shannon Terry's obsession. Today, everyone with Wi-Fi can call themselves a scout. But in the 1990s and early 2000s, the game was different. Information was tougher to get. Scouts called players directly. Film was a precious commodity. I remember sending out DVDs to coaches, but before my era,
It was VHS tapes, so it's big old hunking, tapes, and people would send those in, and we'd try to help kids. We would actually make copies in our student sports office and send them to colleges ourselves to try to help the kids, because it was, if you're a kid who can't afford to send out 100 VHS tapes.
Attending games was much more valuable than it is today. Scouts at these sites were seeing just as many, if not more games than actual coaches. The most valuable thing you could have at a recruiting site in the 2000s was a scout or reporter who had been doing it a long time and had been keeping electronic records of their evaluations. They had irreplaceable quantitative and qualitative data that was impossible to replicate. Very few people had more relationships with these folks than Shannon Terry. He found power in this cornered resource. Brandon Huffman is another pillar in the industry, and he was a guy that Shannon was able to bring in early to 24/7 Sports as a national recruiting editor. I remember meeting Brandon as an 8th grader, and he's been covering recruiting for over 2 decades. He has stories like scouting a linebacker up in Napa and telling him he's going to be an incredible tight end one day. That kid's name was Brock Bowers. Brandon helped me understand another reason why guys like himself and Greg Biggins are so difficult to replace.
It comes back to relationships too. And that's where coaches that might have been a grad assistant 10 years ago, those guys are now head coaches at Power 4 schools. And I would take the time when they were GAs at a Cal Poly, hey, these are 5 sleepers that probably aren't going to get recruited by the Power 5 schools, by the BCS schools, what we called them back then. But these are guys to take a look at. And now they're NFL coordinators or NFL position coaches, and they're college coordinators. And they're like, hey, man, you took care of me back then. I want you to know about this guy that we're looking at, or he's going to announce his commitment. And those relationships are kind of what have kept us relevant, because we've got so much history. We've got so much industrial knowledge.
Shannon couldn't pull away everybody from his competitors to come work at 247, but he ended up pulling together an Avengers-like roster in the world of recruiting, each with their own relationship and own data that made 247 the new gold standard. At the national level, Brandon was joined by Barton Simmons, Charles Power, and Steve Wiltfong. They were all part of 247 by 2013. Shannon also snagged OG beat reporters in key college football markets like Josh Newberg, Chris Nee, and Dave Biddle to operate 247 sites. He was still able to build his network effects, but he built them with his data rather than just community message boards. The other resource he cornered to build 247 were guys who understood how to leverage social media in this recruiting news space. Mike Roach mixed X's and O's with relatable Twitter content, helping Horns 247 grow on multiple fronts. Bud Elliott ran data-driven recruiting content and leaned into social analytics early. Steve Wiltfong again evolved into someone who built a Twitter-first breaking news brand using his relationships in a modern way. Then we have to assume countless engineers and mobile-first designers that help 247 understand social better than every other recruiting site. And it paid off. The numbers have never been officially disclosed, and unfortunately I couldn't break that. But in 2015, 247 Sports sold to CBS Interactive. Shannon spent around 5 years at CBS, but the two men who championed 247 from inside the company left to launch Paramount Plus. And unfortunately, Shannon didn't like the direction that 247 was headed under the new leadership. leadership. He also knew he had one more in the tank. He knew that he was addicted to this game, and he had one challenge on his mind.
I had never really built a national brand. Okay, and what I mean by that was Rivals was just recruiting and some fan sites. 24/7 Sports was a heavy data play. We didn't put a lot of money in big name journalists. We didn't go try to hire the Pete Samuels of the world and build it. And I really felt that 25 years plus doing this, and I felt we were coming out of a 10-year, 15-year window where media and data companies around sports truly weren't that good. They were either rights holders, they were aggregators, they were clickbaiters, they were kind of a lot of these things. And I remember having a conversation with Kirk Herbstreit at his house. It was a good friend of mine. And it was always, hey, Kirk, where do you get your information from? Who do you read? Who do you read? Who do you trust? Who, whatever. And that started a conversation. I really think we can build an authentic brand around media and tech from age 13 till I get drafted. Let's do it big and let's do it right.
With that thesis, Shannon launched On3 in 2020. In doing so, he also showed off a power that's been building for about 3 decades at this point in our story: process power. In business, process power is an activity set that enables lower cost and or superior products that can only be matched by an extended commitment. You have to have both extended and extreme commitment to enter this market going against Shannon Terry.
So the beauty of this thing is 1996, June is when I've started, and I can almost say I've done every task along the way, from covering sports to working in technology, all the way through Rivals, 24/7 and On3. I've been the head of product. So every product that you see, crystal ball, rankings, player profiles, all those things, I've led the build on those things. I've done it all. I'm not good at any of it, but I have a passion for college sports.
And it's not just the fact that he's seen all the wrong ways to do things, or that he has the blueprints to things like composite scores or crystal ball rankings. It's the dude's attitude. He still competes aggressively. That's his power. He has built some of the products that have defined the industry, and he's still going.
It's all about the competition. And so that's my job. My job is to build these companies, and we do it by the letter of the law. We build great companies, but it's not my job to throttle back.
Shannon hasn't throttled back by any means. In fact, he added another power to his bag last month when he reached an agreement to buy Rivals. Again, this time it's from Yahoo Sports. Branding power is when a business enjoys a higher perceived value to an objectively identical offering due to historical information about them. Rivals is the brand in recruiting. Now it's under the On3 roof.
The Rivals acquisition is huge for us because I get all of this historical data. I get huge fan communities, and I get a delineation. On3's recruiting brand will no longer, all those assets will move to Rivals. And so I get to delineate the brand of On3 to be, the college side of it, and Rivals be recruiting in high school. So building Rivals as a recruiting brand, no one's more passionate about that than me.
So Shannon's running this new venture with the network effects of the combined On3 and Rivals message boards, the cornered resources of recruiting experts like Steve Wilfong, Charles Power, and Pete Thamel. Plus, he's got unique voices in social like JD Piquel and Hayes Fawcett working for him. Hayes is now the #1 newsbreaker in the recruiting news space. I was able to chat with him, and a lot of what we talk about informed this piece, but unfortunately I had some audio issues, so I can't bring in the quotes. But anyways, back to my point. Shannon's got network effects, cornered resources, his own processing power, and now the branded power of Rivals all working for him at On3. That's a formula I wouldn't bet against. I'm not gonna lie, when I first got into this, I was expecting the industry to look a lot more like a mafia. I was expecting to find more politics, and I'm sure if I spent another 2 months investigating, I could do a video on the shady side of the industry. I'm not naive to the fact that I'm sure this is part of the story. But the truth is, what I found was less mafia and more Moneyball. The recruiting industry is mostly full of folks who just love the game. They love the analytical side of it, compiling proprietary data sets. They love the old school side of it, going out on the road to scout players. They love the reality TV side of it, gossiping about who's gonna go where and why. And for better or worse, Shannon Terry loves this game, this college football media business game specifically, more than just about anybody. It's what led him to the network effects of local message boards. It's what led him to the cornered resource of incredible reporters. It's what led him to the process power that built composite ranking, crystal ball predictions, NIL valuations, and other industry-defining products. It's what led him to buy back the most iconic brand in the industry.
I don't have hobbies. What I'm deeply passionate about, sports, college sports, high school sports, and I'm deeply passionate about these businesses that we build and run.
And ultimately, it's what makes Shannon Terry a founder 3 times over, the Wizard of Woodville, and the godfather of high school football.